My name is Paul Shelley, and welcome to the AstroHistorian. This is a channel dedicated to exploring and explaining the lore of sci-fi and space universes and discussing their impact. Today we'll be looking at the IAE 2955 floor for Origin Jumpworks. Hello everybody, welcome. I do believe it is still live over here. Yeah, we're good. Making sure YouTube can see me and hear me. We're going to jump into the lore here in just a few moments, but I want to make sure everyone can get settled and come in. Doesn't look like we have anybody on the floor with us today, but we'll probably have more folks as we go along. Didn't know I streamed? I do stream occasionally. I used to stream a lot more on this channel, but not as much as I used to. But this is what I call my lore tour. So this is where I go onto the floor of IAE or Invictus, depending on what it is, and do a little bit of spiel about the ships on the floor from each manufacturer. It's changed over the years as CIG has changed the floor, but today I'm doing, or this year I'm doing sort of like a different one, because this is sort of a one where we're going to discuss, or like, we're going to do the ships on the floor specifically for each manufacturer, rather than trying to sit down and do all of the ships at once, because there's a lot of ships. And especially with the multi-manufacturer ones, it's going to be, we talk a little bit about the lore of them as well, so. All right. Let me see where everything is real quick. This is Origin. Okay. This one's going to be a little difficult for me to do. But I'm going to head over there right now as we're talking. Also, I love your vids in the on the ships. Have you done one vid for the Liberator yet? No, it's because it's not gotten lore as far as I know. One of the difficult things is that as CIG has evolved, they've sort of gotten away from doing a bunch of detailed lore documents about each ship, because like there were a lot of ships this year, and to have to write a detailed background story, double checking and triple checking, that takes a lot of time and effort. And that's, you know, from me who does a lot of lore research. I know that CIG, for instance, I know that CIG doesn't do, they don't do, what is it called? Lore Bibles. They do not have a script supervisor at CIG. So there is nobody checking for continuity and checking for that sort of thing, which kind of makes sense since it doesn't really need it. I think they will need it once Squadron comes out, but they really don't have the stuff they usually need. You said for you to usually see. So as a result, it would be very difficult for a single writer to focus on writing stuff for like ships, like fluff, basically for ships, and making sure it's consistent. That would be a lot of work and effort. So instead, they're focusing on the game and writing stuff for the game, and which is a lot easier. So. Got my CZ dusted off. I mean, I could talk with them about it, but I don't think they want I don't have experience as a script supervisor. They probably want an experienced script supervisor for it. Man, I'd kill for a Star System-based lore book. I mean, I would too, which is why I stopped hoping for it and started writing my own. My goal is to write it and then release it in some pieces and then hopefully get enough attention to be like, hey, CIG. Yeah? Through your website? Publish it? There's supposed to be one for 1.0. But they, like, at this point, it's very different. All right. I'm going to set up over here because we don't have anyone on the floor. Let's get started. I'll do that as well, Omega. I want to get off of this. Oop, that's not the right one. Now you can see my back. Welcome to the floor tour of IAE 2955. My name is Paul, Berserker 01 Batman Shelley, your humble host and space bartender here at the Astropub, your space bar at the end of the universe. Sit back, relax, enjoy the show. We've got a good one for you. Your professor on the AstroHistorian as well. So, That is not what I wanted. There it is. See if we have my origin notes. Do I have any origin notes? I do not have any origin notes, so I'm going to have to fly this by the seat of my pants a little bit. But I had some, but I don't. Boo, 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 boo. Details here. All right, let me pull up some go back here and pull up some notes here. Sorry about that. For those of you who don't know, I'm a teacher. It's my day job. So I literally got home just like an hour ago, had dinner, and then get everything set up. So I didn't have enough time to do pre-prep like I usually do for these sorts of things. Live and learn. Figure out what works and what doesn't work. What I need to do is actually update my notes to actually have all of the stuff. All right. What time to Jake tour tomorrow? 2 p.m. There's no lore for the Clipper, but yes, we can talk about it. All right, I found it. Trying to look at the names of it. Lang. All right. All right, let's do this now. I keep hitting that wrong button. That's because I'm so used to that one. All right, so let's get started with the history of Origin Jumpworks. Founded in around 2750, towards the mid to late Meso era in Frankfurt, Germany, Origin Jumpworks got its start being an engine manufacturer. They made high-quality engines for yachts and luxury ships, as well as the capital ships of the UAE Navy. So it's a very high chance that the engines of the Javelin are built by Origin, or at least were designed by Origin. They continue to do so today, so it's likely that a lot of the engines themselves that are mounted on many of the capital ships of the UAE are Origin and Origin. Huh. Now, it was founded by specifically to help out Robert Space Industries and Aegis Dynamics. It was founded on the banks of the Rhine. I'm sorry, not Frankfurt, Cologne. It's from Cologne, Germany. Their first line of ships, then when they actually started to build ships, was actually the 600 series of ships, which is the same 600 we have now, only the exterior is the same, but the interior is slightly different. I've gone over this before in other videos, but there was a time period which I've just dubbed the cargo crisis of the 29th century, where a lot of the companies that were that built or managed cargo under the Meso regime either fell apart because people were afraid of prosecution, or the people who ran them, who were tight within Mesos, were arrested and prosecuted, possibly even killed during the revolutionary change. So there was a lot of new companies that grew out of this change because there just was a lack of companies that would build cargo vessels. This is the reason why the whole series was built. It's the reason why the 600 was built. It's the reason why the Caterpillar was built. Basically, all of the major haulers we have in game right now were built originally in response to the cargo crisis. So, flash forward to 2899, the end of the 30th century. Origin had been making ships like the 600 and also bespoke luxury yachts for about 50 years. When finally they decided they were going to try to compete with RSI and release a ship on the luxury end, but for the consumer. This was Project X3, which we'll go over when we talk a little bit about the X3 project. But it was founded by the infamous Lang brothers. Quick. I have to pull that up on my own, on its own as well. I am very underprepared for this one. Upwards of art. All right. Anywho, they wanted to build a new series of ships to capture the public market. And they started the X3 project, which was a hand-built machine that was sort of a prototype to show that Origin could build ships at smaller scale. This was headed by the Lang brothers, Otto and Andreas Lang, who really put their whole heart into the project. In fact, they weren't actually the heads of the project. They were originally just working on engines, but were very, very passionate about design and efficiency. And their passion about design and efficiency led them to kind of come up with a new solution to Origin's problems. And after being hired, within 6 months of being hired, they were put in charge of the X3 program. And it was shown off at IAE. Where was it? 2898. No, 2899, wasn't it? Yeah, 2899. May have been a little bit earlier than that, but the end of the 30th century. They showed it off as the prototype, and it wowed people. It blew people away that Origin could produce luxury at such small scale. And from there, they created the 300 series, the 200 series, eventually creating the M50 and the 85X, as well as the X1, the 400. The 890 Jump was one of the first ones they built. Well, that one may be a little bit earlier, but it was an example of their sort of dedication to yacht building. And over the years, they have grown. Now, their big sort of controversial take was that in 2919, I believe, In 2913, the CEO, Jennifer Friskers, who's this current CEO of Origin, made the decision to move the company out of Germany and moved it to New Austin on Terra. There, they became the biggest manufacturer, the biggest supplier or employer of the city, and the city has been nicknamed Origin Town for that. this is controversial because this was seen as the first step away from companies that were traditionally Earth-based to move away from Earth. The sort of migration away from the old world to the new world. And Origin caught a lot of slack, caught a lot of flack for that because they were seen as betraying their roots. And so they've sort of become sort of this nexus of they want innovation and changing and doing new things along with their luxury brand, but they are very forward-facing now. They're seen as the future to people outside of Earth, and they're seen as traitors to a lot of the folks who still are in the sole sphere of influence. With that all being said, let's talk about the ships, the reason why you're really here. So, this is the conclusion of the X3 project. The X3 program was led to the development of the 300 and the 200 series of ships. We've never seen the 200 series of ships, but the two brothers decided to split their work into both the 300 and the 200. The original 300 was hand machined and was built by, which one? Was it Otto? Andreas Lang. Yeah, Otto did 200, which is known as an observation craft. So the first handcrafted 300 prototype came out on August 3rd, 2897, and took off from Frankfurt Cosmodrome and flew to orbit. I think went to the moon and back. It included an Earth-Luna slingshot with the initial quantum to Io. Inside 6 months, the 300I-1 was ready to perform jump tests in real space. Here's the problem, though. The company wanted to build an Aurora competitor. The cost of the 300, the first 300, was 10 times the cost of an Aurora. Oh, I'm sorry, 15 times that of the Aurora. So the board stepped in, because the board stepped in and said, this is unacceptable. You have to bring down the price. And Andreas threw a fit because he was like, this is my art. You wanted me to make art. I'm going to make art. So we'll go into the inside so I can show you a little bit of why it's like that. So the bed is here for this is the 350, but if you can see it, look around. Let me see if I can turn the lights on. Yeah, I can't do it. Turn the lights on. There we get some light in. You can kind of see like the interior design. There's a lot of wood paneling. There's a lot of lighting that's very ornate. The original one was like the entire inside was inlaid in wood, handcrafted artists. He actually brought in like sculptors and philosophers and artists to do a lot of the design work rather than engineers. So it really was like a piece of art, as much as it was a ship. But Andreas basically said he was going to quit the project if he didn't get what his way. So the board eventually negotiated and said, Andreas can get his own bespoke ship, which is this ship right here, the 350R. He would be allowed to do whatever he wanted on the 350R, as long as he delivered the 300 down in price, the original 300 and down in price, because this was in planning before that. And so he agreed to that and managed to reduce the cost of the 300 to 4 times the cost of the Aurora, and that was considered okay. And the 300 was a very big success. In fact, the UEE came knocking, and that's the reason why we have the 325A was we know it was an experimental program that the UEE paid Origin to produce, probably for about 10 years before it was actually released. The 315P was one of the first ones they really took an attempt at to beyond the 350, I should say, because they wanted to really take advantage of the ship's design and its popularity amongst beyond just the luxury range. Like the 315P is very popular actually with miners, especially mining groups, because it was used as a utility vehicle that could go deep space and still have some defense. So it would be used to remove mining bags and load them onto larger ships, and then you'd still have the sensor suite involved in the 315, so it could actually scout out for mining and that kind of stuff. The 350 is more unique because the 350 itself was way over budget and behind schedule. This was originally supposed to be built for the racing team, for Origin's racing team. However, because of weird fallbacks, weird issues, the 350 was first available to the civilian market before they actually built the 350 for the racing team. In fact, what's really funny is that there was a court case in 2989 that basically said that the speed limits, which are inherently built into every ship in the UEE, so basically every human ship has inherently built speed limitations, which is one of their lore reasons as to why you can't go through certain speeds, that they were too low because improvements in safety as well as navigation over the course of the last 100 years meant that you could go much faster. The UEE Supreme Court decided this was true, and they ordered the speed limits to be raised. So the first ship to actually take advantage of this speed limit raise was the 300, which was still in development at the time. So by the time the 300, the 315, the 325, and the 350 came out, they had already been designed around using the new speed limits. Thus, they were the fastest ships in the verse. It would require, I think it wasn't until the Herald came out that it was actually dethroned some of these ships, which was, again, I think 2915, 2920. So eventually the 350R was added to the racing roster, and the year it was added to the racing roster, it actually won. Maybe I'm confusing the M50. That might be the M50 story. No, that was the 350. No, it was 350. That was the M50. All right, so that's the Origin 350R. The M50 is a much more interesting story. Didn't we have an M50 here, or is it the 100? All right. Well, we'll not talk about the M50 then. 100. Now, this is a more recent addition to the Origin lineup. The 100 series first came out in the last dozen or so years, and it was because of their creation of the air system. I believe it's still written on here. The air system, the adaptive intake refinery. Origin built the air system as a way of refueling ships gradually while they are active in space. So basically, it's an intake system that would suck up like nearby hydrogen atoms that would be nearby, and then refine that into hydrogen fuel and refuel the tanks. But they needed a ship to test it on. And the 100 series was the first attempt that Origin had ever made to produce an actual viable ship. The problem is that it kept exploding. It kept failing as a project. So they shelved it many years before. So it wasn't until the 2940s and the 2950s that they actually decided to take the idea of the 100i and they adapted it with the air system and created the 100i lineup. So this is really the first true successful competitor in the starter market that they have. It's still like 2 times the cost of an Aurora, but it's much cheaper than the 300. This is the 135C, which has a cargo bay, internal cargo bay in the back. And it also has a cargo bay, another cargo bay in the back. So it's got like double the cargo bay if you really wanted to. But it's got a very basic Spartan bed, and it's got a nice like pilot seat. Overall, and there's several different versions of this. There's the 125A and the 100I, I think is the other ones. So, all right. But talking about the M50, the M50's designer, who was Alberto Vara. Alberto Vara designed the M50 and was very successful in its design. So after he designed the M50, with the launch of the both the Dragonfly and the Nox, Origin wanted to get in on the racing scene and the open top hover race. So they tapped their best racing designer, which was Vara, who designed the M50, to design the X1 as their answer to the Dragonfly and the Nox. So this is, there's 2 different versions of this. This is the X1 Force, and I think this is the racing version, the Velocity. So the Velocity is the actual racing force version, and this is the combat version that comes with a gun. They sort of sit in between the Nox and the Dragonfly. They're not as fast as the Nox, but it's more maneuverable, and it's not as maneuverable as the Dragonfly, but it's faster than Dragon. So it's kind of an in-between ones, and there's 3 different versions. Now this is the 400i. We don't know a lot about the 400i's origin, but the assumption is that this is sort of in the same vein as the 300 series. If the 300 series was Origin's entry level into the market, the 400 series is sort of the entry. Its way of creating an entry level yacht. The 300 is a sports car, like a luxury vehicle for the masses. This is a luxury boat a luxury yacht for the masses. So it's cut down compared to its cousin, the 890 Jump, but has a lot of unique features. It's got a bespoke garage specifically built for the Origin X1. This was built specifically to hold the Origin X1, to be kind of have symbiosis for it. And this is seen as sort of like a luxury touring ship. It's not really an exploration ship as much as it's a expedition, not even expedition. It's sort of, you can go out and hang out with your friends and have a good time. Where do I find this info for the lore? A lot of it, I'll go over that in the question and answer session if you remember that, but it's a lot of different sources. But this is the airlock. I don't even know what these bays are. I think this is just component bays. My guess. Then we have the habitation deck. 2 beds. 1 bed. You got like a scanning suite, got a kitchen, and you got a small little place where you can sit and eat food. We've got a little bathroom here. And this is the bridge for 3 people. Most of this ship's weaponry are designed as defensive rather than offensive. It's not really designed as a combat ship. It is much more of a ship designed to keep you safe. This is the cargo area. I'll send down as well. Those are the escape pods. There are 4 escape pods, even though there's 3 crew members. And I think that's it for the Origin lineup. We'll go hang out here at the Origin Lounge here. and take your questions. Let me also unmute myself. I think I muted myself on Discord. If you have any questions, feel free to let me know. And try to keep your questions to lore questions. I guess I can answer that first question. Where do you find all this info from the lore? So CIG from the beginning has done sort of a scattershot approach to lore, where you have lore which is relevant to individual events, and it can be found in news articles, which are sort of transcriptions of actual broadcasts in the verse. It can be found in Whitley's Guide articles, which are usually found in Jump Point, which are sort of like, car monthly magazines sort of thing, or aerospace magazines, more like car magazines, where they sort of break down the history of a ship, who designed it, where it comes from, that kind of thing. Sometimes they're in ship brochures. They don't really do brochures anymore, but they used to do detailed brochures that break down the history of a ship, sort of like advertising material. And then they also do these things called like This Day in History, or Loremaker's Guide to the Galaxy, and there's sometimes Loremaker's Guide for Systems. So it's a scattershot approach that you can find a lot of information over the course of a ton of different locations. Jump Point has a bunch of articles that are written, not just in Whitley's Guide, but there's like excerpts of biographies or excerpts of stories from other things. So question, is there any other variants of the 400 series? Not in lore that I know of, no. On a scale of Star Citizen lore, how shady is Origin, and do they have notable skeletons in the closet? They don't seem to have a lot of skeletons. The thing you have to understand about Origin is that they're very German. And I mean that in the most flattering way. Is the Gatsby supposed to be a real ship in the game? I think so, yes. What's the story of the 890? Is it from a time when Origin was focused on custom space yachts? Yes. In fact, I said it earlier and I kind of jumbled it up a little bit, but the 890, I believe, is the second ship they ever made. It is their attempt. The CEO at the time of Origin was obsessed with the idea of selling not a custom, but a very mass manufactured ship, yacht to the people. And in fact, announced the 890 jump several years before they'd even put up the plans for it. This was sort of like this was his dream, so he sort of announced they were going to do this, but didn't have any plans. There was no like mock-ups, there was no design, and it took them much longer than he anticipated to sort of get all this stuff together to be able to build it. And the thing was that everyone thought that it was a joke. They hated it. Like, the media dogged on Origin all the time for this. But when it actually released, it wowed people. People were like, what? No way, this is real. Is there a lore reason why there hasn't been any new ships from Origin in the last few years? Origin tends to produce ships in very slow, methodical patterns. So, for instance, the 600 was produced in the 2850. The 890 jump was like 2880. The 300 was produced in 2900. The M50 was produced like 10 years after that. The 85X was actually produced at the same time as the M50 because they were kind of a competition ships to build a snub ship. The 85X ended up becoming a snub ship for the latest generation of 890 jumps. Then the 100, then the X series, which is 10 years after that. Then the 100 of 10 years after that, and then the 400 series is the most recent one. So in general, Origin is a very methodical and slow manufacturer. at least in lore. So German fairy tale or German engineering? German engineering, yeah. So Origin is basically Chris Roberts. Yeah, so you got to understand that basically all of the ship designs, the ship manufacturers, are all Chris Roberts. All of them are elements of Chris Roberts. Chris Roberts is notably a huge fan of luxury cars. I believe he has his own. He's a BMW driver. Please don't judge him on that as much as I judge him on the fact that he's a BMW driver. Yeah, he's a BMW fan. So that's where like the Origin number system comes from. It's from BMW, but he likes a lot of German luxury vehicles. This is sort of like his taste in vehicle, and so a lot of Origin is based off of German luxury vehicles. And then you have like Aegis, which is sort of the military brand. It's very Lockheed Martin, but it's very Chris Roberts' heavy military historical approach. He loves, World War I and World War II aviation. And Anvil is sort of up there as well. See, I did get a Ferrari while at Origin, yeah. He probably knows what the fuck a turn signal is, at least. He grew up in Austin. I guarantee you he doesn't know what those are. All right, let's get to the office. This scene. Whoa! What's wrong with BMW? BMW drivers have a stereotype. There's definitely a stereotype for BMW drivers, and for BMW in general. What do you think the next Origin ship to be announced? I'd love for them to actually build like a ship. Hi. Oh. I don't know what this is, but they jumped at me. Cool, Paul. Thanks. I never knew that. BMW all the way 300i. Taking 3 series from BMW is nice. Yeah. This is sort of off topic, but the way I've always heard it is that BMWs are German, so you have to think like a German in order to produce, to use BMWs, which is you have to routinely take it in for maintenance, and if you routinely take it in for maintenance, things won't break. You just have to schedule regular maintenance when you're supposed to, as it's instructed inside the manual. And if you do that, it'll be fine. Whereas Toyotas are built to basically run forever, and you never need to maintenance them because they're built for that sort of audience that doesn't drive a lot. A lot of places where Toyota is very popular, especially in Japan, driving isn't as common in Japan as it is in other places, and lots of places in Southeastern Asia just don't drive a lot because they have much better public services. So I've always been told like the reason why people love Toyotas is because you can literally throw a bomb at them and they'll still keep going, aka the Hilux. But that's because it's just a different manufacturing design. What's the Toyota brand in game? MISC. It's sort of an amalgam of all of the Japanese car brands. It's Toyota, Mitsubishi, all those sorts of things. No way, Miss stuff isn't well laid out enough. Drake is Lada. Not much better. Exactly. If anything, worse. What would Crusader be? Not a good comparison because of most recent stuff, but Boeing. Crusader is Boeing. Boeing car sounds fun. It's a mixed metaphor because a lot of ships in Star Citizen are cars. Some of them are planes, and some of them are ships, like ocean ships. Kruger is harder to put. They're very German as well in terms of the names, but they're actually from Berea. They're from the same place that that Drake is from. But they made parts before they made vehicles and guns, and they were mostly known for being a parts manufacturer. They're like up there with Bearing. Like them and Bearing make most of the stuff that makes up ships. So like the bolts, the rivets, the wiring, the clips, you know, all of the things, the paneling. They're the ones who make those parts. If you want to know what Crusader is in terms of cars, the way they're described is rugged, easy to maintain, and with a bit of a flair, but generally speaking, they're seen as reliable, almost to a fault. They're like Drake, if Drake had class. RSI is almost certainly Ford. They're that kind of, I mean, they're even the people who built the first commercially available spacecraft. They're Ford. Good bads, they're Ford. So the overhead on Kruger ship is probably unique. Yes. Feel free to ask more questions. We'll be live for another 2 or 3, another 10 or so minutes. You'll have more questions. And then we'll be, for those of you on YouTube, we're going to be transitioning over to our gameplay section. For those of you who don't know, I do play the game quite frequently on my other channel, which is the Astro Pub is my main channel. I'm there, I stream there Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, Sundays, and Mondays. Random question, but any update on the fix that Star Citizen crashes launching on game using the AMD GPU? Yes, you have to revert either update your drivers to the most modern driver or revert it back to 249.1, I think, because it's an issue with Easy Anti-Cheat, not Star Citizen. Easy Anti-Cheat is so any game with Easy Anti-Cheat has the same problem. Origin, question, does Origin collaborate much? Not that we know of. They're not like MISC, who just sort of takes practicality into place. But they do build engines, and they do have a good working relationship with both RSI and Aegis. Like they almost certainly built the engines for all of the modern capital ships. Which manufacturer resonates with you the most? It's not even a contest. It's Drake. Will we ever see the original 600 series? I really hope so. I think that when they do the revamp of the 600 series, they may take because they did the same. They did something very similar with the Zeus. So many people are like, "Hey, we'd love to see an actual Zeus in game." They eventually made the Zeus Mark II. I think if people continued to bang on about having the 600 as a hauler because it was originally designed as a hauler in lore, I think the dev teams would like that, because it would be a bitch and hauler. It would hold a lot of stuff. That's a guy on Twitch. What the original 600 series asked? Yeah, that was the person there. How does the renting at the show work? They add a new MFG every day and remove the previous ones. So you have 2 days to rent, and then they bring them all back at the very end of the show. So you go to the rental kiosks on the floor, and you can rent anything on that list for a day. And you can go there and you can rent RSI and Origin ships. But tomorrow, you'll only be able to rent Origin and Drake ships. And then the day after that, it's Drake and I think Aegis or something else like that. Pro tips, you can rent IAE ships without going to this event center. Really? Mentioned Origin is based out of based in New Austin on Terra. Terra is not just one city planet, right? No. In fact, there is Nova Kiev is in Terra. So Nova Kiev is the headquarters of Anvil. There's Kazi, which is the headquarters of and home of the brothers who founded Asperia. It's also where the Kazi Grazer comes from. It's on the southern. It's in the southern continent is called Kazi in Terra. So there's a southern continent which is very cold, and the city is called Kazi as well, Kazi City. And there's Prime, which is where the main landing zone is. But yeah, there's multiple cities. Question: why do you love the Redeemer so much? You answer. You can know that question. I hate that shit. I hate it because it's a waste of good. They never really built out the lore for it. In fact, it's worse because it has contradictory lore rather than like bad lore. It contradicts itself. We don't know when it was built. At one point, it literally in game, its definition, it's what it was. Its inverse description was the description of the meta of how it was built by Star Citizen fans. So definitely getting that system last. Terra, it's actually the last system in the before 1.0. Yes, it's the 5th system in the game. It's after Castro we get Terra. From the Traveler rental place. So like in the spaceport. Neat. No more Defense Con. We might see it come back in the future. When will we get the Normandy? CIG has been making the Normandy in different spiritual and other ways for many times. Like for instance, the Spirit is definitely the Normandy, but so is the Odyssey to a degree. The Perseus is a bit of the Normandy in terms of its oversized guns. Love your content, sir. Been watching a lot of your videos, and I love how you give magic to all the lore. I just try to tell a good story. Thank you, though. Which do you think of the systems we'll get after the 5? I flip-flop on a couple, but I'm almost certainly we'll get Towhill, Odin, Hadrian, and Magnus. The last one I flip on is we'll either get Virgil, because it's a Vandal system, or we'll get some Vandal system that the Vandal are coming in from for the invasion of Nyx, in fact. Or we'll get Bremen, which is the headquarters of Consolidated Outland. Yeah, Odin's easy because it's the main story for Squadron 42. It depends on where they're planning on putting Squadron 42 Part 2, because that may also put into perspective of what they what system they build after that. The Normandy is the Normandy. All other ships that are what they are. I wish people would stop trying to designate ships as the Star Citizen Normandy, Enterprise, Serenity, Rocinante. You can add them there. I think people want to... Star Citizen is so based off of nostalgia for various space genres. It's sort of like an amalgam of every single space drama, opera sort of story that they're trying to sort of cram everything they can into it. So they're trying to like use it to show their love of, like the developers trying to do it to show their love of the genre as a whole, science fiction and space. And as a result, I think that it's only natural for people to gravitate towards them. What system is the most alluring to your to you or your station? I personally consider my character's home to be Magnus. Magnus is the most interesting system to me. But if without Magnus, it's going to be Hades. The Hades system is absolutely wonderful because it's a puzzle. It is the system of a dead species, a species that died off, intelligent species that died off, I think 400,000 years ago, possibly 4 million years ago. We're talking like before humanity existed kind of thing. They never found jump points. They never had jump travel, but they did crack one of their planets in two. We don't know how. They didn't leave any records other that we could see, and most of their planets have been devastated beyond belief, like entirely uninhabitable. Like they bombed each other to death. Does ArcCorp have any famous locations? It's kind of hard to believe that to believe a Trantor-like planet has so little going on. It doesn't really have a lot of famous locations. It has a lot of famous companies that have either headquarters or branches there. You got to think that you got to understand that ArcCorp first and foremost is like a giant industrial park. It's built for the use of various companies to take advantage of. The equator is supposed to be ringed with a series of antimatter plants. So, or not antimatter plants, antimatter engine plants, where people go build antimatter engines, which is a very dangerous and toxic environment. It's difficult to do. It's so toxic that was the original purpose of them purchasing ArcCorp, the planet, was to be able to have a planet they could legally destroy, like environmentally destroy. So they didn't really have, once they built those plants, they didn't really have any use for the rest of the planet. So they started to sell them off or lease them off in pieces to give people access to them. Because now they don't have to abide by environmental regulations or other regulations because it's not inside a specific planet area. To Hurston with extra steps. Hurston, but outsourcing. There's a lot of outsourcing. I'm liking Nyx a lot with the addition of Nyx 1. Sorry, Paul. I don't mind Nyx 1. I want it to make sense. That's what I've always said, is that I don't like the narrative of Nyx 1 being a terraformed planet, with the context that Nyx 1 is still, that the People's Alliance of Levski is still this, and the system itself is still very on the fringe, and the UAE kind of, but doesn't really want them to become into the fold. If they go whole hog and actually deep dive and make the addition of Nyx 1 the B-line story, the B story for the next year, like the Science Run Amok, the Yorit stories of this year, then, and I mean like full dive into it, head first, then I think it will be a better, I will accept it as long as it makes sense. Right now, there's still some weird things like why the People's Alliance would let a corporation, because they hate corporations, fuck with a planet that they technically control. Why live in an asteroid when its fully habitable planet exists nearby? Well, that's the thing. That's actually a question that's being asked in the verse, because the planet is not habitable in lore yet. The planet is currently being terraformed in lore. It's been in the process of terraforming for the last 2 years with an experimental company called Genesis Terraforming. CIG is not subtle. So this process has already been in process for a year and is showing great results. And likely CIG is going to introduce Nyx 1 at sometime next year. So it'll likely be about 2 to 2.5 years of terraformation, which actually is pretty short, but it's not so unbelievably short that that's uncalled for, because terraforming varies from planet to planet, and there are some terraforming, like for instance the original Selene, or Cyrene, the main planet of the Virgil system, was terraformed in 5 years, and that was 200 years, 300 years ago. So like deep history of humanity, it was terraformed really quickly with worse terraforming tech. So, but how's an asteroid more habitable than a non-habitable planet? Unless it's like Venus. Both of them were like Venus. Nyx 2 is a Venusian planet, and Nyx 1 has is a borderline smog planet. It has similar chemicals in there. I do have drops on, yes. I keep forgetting to put drops on. There you go. It's also new terraforming tech, yes. Levski is a converted mining station as well. Yeah, it was basically like Levski made sense for them at the time that they were around. So when they first arrived at the Nyx system, Levski was a pre-built station ready for them to use for organization and for other purposes. Do you know anything about Spider? Yes, we know a lot about Spider. What do you want to know? Since we're in planetary lore, is Mars still fucked at an atmosphere? Nope. It's actually fully terraformed. Mars has a fully terraformed atmosphere. It's the headquarters of Greycat, actually, where Greycat's headquartered. A lot of industrial companies come from Mars. I think Argo is headquartered on Mars too. So Argo makes a lot of sense to be headquartered on Mars. Their orange color is dusty Mars, so. Do we have any total pop numbers in the UAE? We have some references. So for instance, I think it was 2 billion was what's his name? What Bishop said about Vega. It might be 2 million, but I think it was 2 billion on Vega itself. Vega 2. And Vega 2 is a very old system. It's probably a little bit more underpopulated compared to the rest of the UAE, but it's like a core system. So if we take that as like the low average, we have 30-something systems, and the core systems of humanity is about 12. And we know that like Earth is actually below the numbers of we have right now. So like right now we have 8 billion on Earth. It's probably like 4 billion on Earth in 2950s. So we're talking in the range of 10 to 50 billion people. Oh, for one planet. Yeah, for one planet. Yeah, I did a video on Grey Cat. There's a breakdown I did on Grey Cat and the origin of it. Yes, Earth had a major diaspora, which spread out people. In fact, Earth had a much higher population towards the end of the overpopulation era than we have today. So, like, let's just say 15 billion. And that was one of the impetuses for Mars and, again, beyond, was to empty out Earth as much as possible because of the resource shortages and other issues that are on Earth. What's the point of Spider, and how did it come to be? I really find it cool that it's basically a space slums, but I really don't really comprehend the scale. So Spider was a failed experiment by the UEE Navy, at the time the UNE Navy. One of the biggest problems that the UNE had was sensor technology, because at the time, that as far as we know, faster than light communications weren't really a thing. So they needed some way of doing long-range sensors, like be able to like get more information. And so they had this idea of building a station in what we now know is Cathcart as a giant listening post to try to figure out, like, you know, help find jump points and observe other star systems, even star systems that they already had connections to. And it was supposed to be sort of like military checkpoint, this military system. But as technology advanced, it was just a giant boondoggle. So they abandoned the station. And slowly and surely after that, they began to create, to dump ships into Cathcart as a mothball location. So whenever they had ships that were sort of phased out, they would take those ships and they would dump them next to the station in Cathcart. And over time, people began to take over the station and the ships, and they sort of merged all of the ships and the stations together into one gigantic space station. So it's sort of a what's the term for it? Shantytown, I guess you could say. Puebla in like where they basically are building they basically built an entire system or entire planet or like landing zone out of garbage. It's a flotilla. It's similar enough to the flotillas of the Banu, but favela, thank you. Trash amalgam, yeah. And over time, the people who began to call Spider home were more and more outlaws. And when I say outlaws, it's important to understand that I don't mean just pirates. I mean people who are actively antagonistic to the UEE. most of the outlaws and gangs you see in Star Citizen are actually kind of political, because a lot of them have their origins in rebel groups that have fought against the original unification of humanity under the UNE during the Unification Wars. The people who survived those often fled off into deep space to become pirates. Much like the new Perseus skins? Yes. Very good. The best shirt. Yeah. Political dissidents, yes. So, as a result, Spider is actually sort of a neutral ground. Spider's basically split into two places. Half of Spider is designed to be under control of a local voluntary militia with its own rules and regulations. And then the fun part of Spider is lawless, but it only has one rule: do not break the rules. And if you break the rules, the punishment is death. So you do anything to break the rules in the free zone, anyone is allowed to shoot you. The rework is going to be amazing. I love the look of the flying porcelain egg. Can always get the 400i now when the rework comes out. You can then decide if you want to go up or not. Do we know where the Origin originated from? Yes, they originated from Germany. They originated from Cologne, Germany in 2750-ish. Hey there, Fade. How you doing? Well, Keller from Keller's Run actually broke the rule, which is why he got hunted. Any more questions before we transition over? Kind of coming in. These videos are going to be, or these streams are going to be a little bit short. I plan on doing them every day from now until the end of the mainline series of ships. So Drake is next. I think Aegis after that, but we'll be going into next week. This is the last one that's going to be this late. From now on, they're going to start at about 2 p.m. Eastern. So you'll see them at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'll start streaming on my Twitch channel at 1 p.m. Eastern, and then do some setups to get people so that if they want to join us for the tour, and then we'll transition away from that to whatever content I'm doing. Typically, I stream on Twitch and YouTube for my the Astro Pub videos, Astro Pub channel on Thursdays, Fridays, Saturdays, and Sundays and Mondays. We'll be changing that a little bit in the new year. We'll be streaming Fridays through Mondays. But question, Paul, why does CIG always shoot itself in the foot? That is a question for Chris Roberts and the CIG team. I couldn't tell you. Are there any ship manufacturers, active or not, who originated in any major American cities? RSI. We don't know which city it was, but it's heavily implied that RSI was originated in the US. It's the oldest manufacturer, too. If I had to venture a wild guess, RSI is either from Austin, Texas, or LA, because those are the two places where Chris Roberts lived. I'm assuming you already talked about Engineering 4.5, and I'll bet I can just go back and look at the VODs. Yeah, from last, the Alpha Hours yesterday. But I'm actually going to be releasing a video of that on YouTube, like just that section here in like tomorrow. Quick question. Do you have knowledge for one of the origins of some of the of our alien manufacturers? I know pretty much all of them except for the Tavaran. Because the Tavaran is really not actually an alien manufacturer; it's a human manufacturer remaking some alien technology. We'll have an entire day just dedicated to the alien manufacturers. I can give you the general gist of Gatak is actually one of the older manufacturers. They helped the current family of the Emperor rise to power. Well, they helped the first Emperor of the Xi'an rise to power, and so they were given a privileged position where they always were given the right to make industrial ships for the Xi'an, and as a result, they have. As a result, they have Esperia, but yeah. As a result, they've been making industrial ships forever. And then Aopoa is a new kid on the block. They are the ones who really revolutionized how the multi-vector ship thrusters. But I say new kid on the block, probably 1,000+ years old. We don't know exactly when, but the Banu is actually called the Banu Suli. The Banu Suli is sort of a Suli that exists specifically. It's called the Banu Suli in human marketing and human like UEE designations. Our drops for Star Citizen on? They are. You just gotta make sure you link your account. You gotta be 4 hours to get the armor skins. So the Med Center in Tressler just called for a patient they have lost, describing Waldo. How have I never heard that little Easter egg? It's been around for several years. Thank you. Well, I'll be starting them at 2 p.m. So if you want to join me live, make sure you head to the Discord, which is linked in the description. I'll be setting up at around 1 p.m. Eastern, which is noon Central where I live. Which is like 5 p.m. Central European time. How do we know the lore diverted from our real world? Could be spoilers. I feel like Drake was started in Alabama or Mississippi. He was starting in Berea, but yeah. Do you think? I think you explained this in the lore video, but when did the Star Citizen diverge from our real world? As far as we know, 2038. No problem. Yeah, Banu Suli is like human company, basically. It's basically an export company. It's designed for, it's a place where all the Banu Suli who build ships, they go to that Suli and give them or sell them those ships, and then those ships are sold to the human market. Because they have, the Banu Suli has a specific set of standards which are unique to human space. So they have to build within human safety parameters. So they have to, because they have to build to that standard, all the ships from the Banu Suli are the same. But if you bought a ship from the Banu Suli who actually make ships in the Banu Protectorate, you're looking at a very different loadout. You're looking at like very different things will be added to that ship because each Suli makes them differently. The development of the quantum drive, yes. No, with the foundation of RSI. Quantum Drive was built, I think, 20 to 30 years after that. But yeah, the foundation of RSI is 2038. All right, for those of you on YouTube, we're going to wrap this up and we're going to move on to... oh, thank you to the Stigum for that Twitch Prime sub. And I didn't see that as well. Spoony Orbit for that sub. Chaotic Hizu. Thank you all for those subs and those follows. I'll be right back. For those of you who are watching this on YouTube, I'm just going to go take a few minutes break. But for those of you on Twitch, or for those of you watching on Twitch, on YouTube, I'm going to end the stream here, and we're going to move on to the Astropub stream. So, like I always say, remember, ex Historia ad Astra. Thank you for watching.